about sorcery.
Yes.
So a number of things have happened. Well, really one main thing has happened. Last week we announced that we were doing a pre-order for Sorcery beta booster boxes. And that pre-order is going to run until the end of March, I believe is what kind of Eric was hoping for on that side of things. So it's going to run for a pretty long time. We've got, what, 6 weeks left in the pre-order?
6 or 7-ish. I guess February was a short month.
Kind of winging it.
I think it's about 7.
Yeah, about 7.
A lot of time.
So that obviously led to a number of questions about what is beta, what is this pre-order, why does it exist, why do I feel this way, like these kinds of things. So we thought we would address a number of those questions and any additional ones that come up during the stream. So if you're a Sorcery player, if you're potentially thinking about beta, if you've already bought beta, if you're confused, you got questions, you're not sure how things are going to work, then we're here for as long as it takes, because we really don't have a clock on this because it's live and we can do this for a long time because we're not doing it every day.
According to the production team, 7 hours.
We have 7 hours of recording that we can do. 6 minutes or 6 hours and 44 minutes are left.
So there is a clock.
Yeah. ProRes is a big.
I have a feeling we can make it through
I think we can make it.
all the questions by then.
Let's start. Do we have a basic rundown? So like, first of all, what is the beta set of Sorcery TCG? Because it's kind of, honestly, for me, it's very confusing already. What's alpha, what's beta, what's revised, what's Arthurian Legends, and what's to come.
Yeah.
What are the pre-cons, et cetera? So let's cover the
back
basics.
it up a little bit. Last year, Eric's Curios of the Publisher did a Kickstarter for Sorcery TCG.
Right.
And as far as I know, it's the most successful TCG Kickstarter of all time.
It is. In fact, I think the only one bigger in card games is Exploding Cats.
Exploding Kittens.
Yeah, Exploding Kittens.
You're showing your age. But they did a really successful Kickstarter last year, and part of that Kickstarter, they said, was what you're getting when you back this Kickstarter and what you're buying is the alpha edition of the game. And the only way they were going to make alpha available for purchase was through the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And it was a really clever way to do it because basically however many boxes got bought through the Kickstarter is they were going to print. I mean, I assume they'll print some amount extra for loss and damage and all that kind of stuff, but like this is not a product that's going anywhere else. Like you either back the Kickstarter or you didn't. And then that's the alpha print run. And the best comparable for this, if you're familiar with something like, well, Fab made it complicated because they've done 1,000 different things, so I won't even use that. But that's alpha. And so after that Kickstarter ends, there's a lot of people that don't do Kickstarter, don't want to do Kickstarter, don't have the money to put money up last February or March for a game that's not even out yet.
I'll give you a real anecdote. I backed the Kickstarter for the pre-cons.
Really?
Yeah.
I took the opposite approach.
and then I split. Robert.
I did get the pre-cons.
And a few other people were splitting.
There
like
was a split
few
being talked
booster
about,
boxes.
but I don't trust that.
But that's like.
I don't trust the splits.
That it's not going to be the fullness of a collection that I might want to build the greatest water deck of all time. So for somebody like me who's going to want more of this first set, the cards in alpha, it's like, well, I didn't back any more on the Kickstarter. Arthurian Legends is the second set. Is there going to be a way to get those cards again, ever?
Yeah.
And I think beta is basically the answer to that.
And there's a ton of people that didn't even hear about Sorcery until after the Kickstarter was over.
Yeah.
And so as the first set of the game, I think the intent all along was that if there's another print run, it's going to be called beta. Mm-hmm. And so alpha is just the name given to the first set of Sorcery, the first print run of the first set of Sorcery. It's got a little alpha symbol on the bottom. So beta, as described by Eric over in the Sorcery Discord, the beta edition will contain the same 403 card set as alpha, with only minor tweaks to a few card arts, and text with increased rules clarity. The beta set will also get 4 new elemental avatars, and it will use the beta symbol instead of a symbol on each card, instead of the alpha symbol.
Yeah.
And I think that when it says the new elemental avatars here, the whole reason that this
tell me this, because this is the whole thing. And publishers do this a lot with Kickstarter.
Yeah. So on Kickstarter, like when I got the pre-cons, the reason that I got the pre-cons, a lot of times pre-cons have all the same cards as booster boxes. So I backed for a lot of booster boxes, but the pre-cons were marketed as will include exclusive elemental avatars.
They use the word.
Exclusive. And so it was like, well, I'll get the pre-cons, that'll have the avatars, and then like if I end up not needing the rest of the cards, maybe I'll give those decks to friends that maybe want to try the game or whatever. So I don't have full details on what the new elemental avatars look like, but as far as I know, the pre-cons from Kickstarter are going to be exclusive to or the avatars are exclusive. There will be foil versions of those same avatars in the booster boxes.
Booster boxes of what?
Alpha.
Yeah.
But they're the same. pretty sure they're the same card as the pre-con. They're just not in non-foil. So the only way to get the non-foil avatars from Alpha is in those pre-cons.
Okay.
And then there's apparently foil versions in the box. But then, presumably through beta, they're going to replace either the art or what the card does so that we have new elemental avatars and they can maintain the promise of exclusive
Right.
to the pre-cons, but also give people that didn't get in on that the opportunity to get those avatars, right? Because
Right.
from a collectability standpoint, really cool. From a gameplay standpoint, having things that are really hard to get, especially if they're any good at all.
It'd be like a hero in Fab that you had to kickstart, and then I can't play Briar because I didn't get in on the Kickstarter, right?
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Which is why, like, even with Fab and now a Sorcery subscription, which we'll talk about more later, comes with exclusive promo. And very intentionally, it's like we don't want to, neither company would do this, but we don't want a card that's actually truly exclusive because even though that would be great for the subscriptions, that's not good for players.
Right.
Like that's just not
Only
a good
like
scenario.
aesthetic.
And some games have done that. Like I think Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon have both had promo cards that are very good and very legal to play in a tournament.
Well, they've done about everything.
And then
their history is,
that becomes a problem. So that's beta.
Okay.
And then I have seen talk of revised edition. And I think this is all still very loose in terms of what that means. But presumably, if beta edition sells out at some point in the future, if they decided to print these cards again, they would be part of a revised set. And I think revised is actually terminology that comes from Magic. Mm-hmm. Like revised edition, different borders, something different about it. A lot of times, too, you will see a revised edition, and I've seen reference to this, but make big changes.
Like really change the rules.
This card's rules didn't work, or this card didn't function. So the revised edition of this card, maybe this card's unplayable because of some change we had to make in the rules. So we're truly changing what's going on. Sometimes revised editions also want cards from different sets together. Mm-hmm. So maybe after 3 or 4 years, you go back and you say, all right, here's all the favorite cards, and here's all the best cards, and here's all the problem cards. Put those into a revised edition print run, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing. And we don't have any info from Eric explicitly on this, right? As far as how revised is going to work.
Yeah, we just have references to it that he's made, but not explicit.
But the vibe, the idea, I guess, that I have of revised is like, I will print revised if I need to, because beta sells out of its print run.
Yeah.
And that would be an additional way to get the first set cards, but they would also be different in some kind of way.
I think it also just leaves the door open for a way to print these cards in the future that doesn't affect the collectability side of this, right? Because TCG, trading card game, CCG, collectible card game, there is a collectible element to this, right? It'd be like if they could just keep printing Michael Jordan rookie cards.
Right.
That look exactly the same. Then,
You mean LeBron James rookie cards, the best basketball player ever?
Who's LeBron James? That's a conversation that could be a fun one to have on stream. So anyways, that's more or less the alpha, beta, revised.
Okay, and the key thing there, I think, and this is the thing I didn't really appreciate until really this past week when we were having some discussions about it, but we don't actually know that revised is going to happen.
I don't think
Eric said that, and he's certainly not told us that, hey, yeah, revised is coming next, kind of a thing. So, like you said, I think the door is open, but it's not like I can expect revised to also exist, but it also might exist.
I also think, these things as you go change and evolve, and the situation changes and what you need change. Even you look at Fab and the adjustments they've made over time.
Yeah.
They had to make some really sweeping changes because they had some ideas on how it was going to function. They went, and then you run into certain problems, and it's like, well, do we stick with this thing that's clearly a problem because it's how we set expectations 3 years ago, or do we make an announcement and say, hey, we're changing plans and here's how it's going? I think that door just should be open because hypothetically, I mean, a publisher, and not that I have any, nothing would tell me this is the case, but like decisions change. Like all the time, and you don't know. We're still with Sorcery. It's crazy because this game isn't out yet.
Yeah,
like it's not even close. We're way early. Most games that we've played, like these conversations don't happen until after it's out.
Yeah, because what Fab basically did was like alpha and revised for every set for like 4 or 5 sets.
Yeah, first edition.
That was kind of their first edition unlimited is equivalent to alpha revised. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of beside the point. So there's alpha, first set of Sorcery, only available through the Kickstarter, and there's beta first set of Sorcery. Slight changes potentially to some of the cards, but otherwise basically the same.
Yeah.
And it is available via pre-order right now from us up until March.
Yeah, so tell me about the
Key
pre-order.
thing. So I'll tell you some details about the pre-order. Pre-order's running until the end of March. Boxes are at MSRP, $150. The
MSRP being manufacturer suggested retail
manufacturer suggested retail price. Yeah, so that's about, it's like the $4 a pack that you would expect. I think Pokemon is similar, and they've been selling out like crazy, actually.
Yeah, Pokemon Fab packs have been $4 since as long as I can remember.
Yeah, but Fab only has how many in theirs?
24.
They only have 24 packs.
But
That's why the
boxes are
price
110.
difference is there.
Magic got rid of MSRP.
Yeah, they sure did.
Which we'll cover some of those reasons, I'm sure, as we get into this. But they just removed it for a lot of reasons.
Which is actually, I don't know, that's kind of a, some people don't like that, some people do. You got a lot of opinions about that.
There were a lot of opinions about that.
Anyway, so we're running it. We worked with Eric to set this up. There's really a couple of reasons for that. So the first reason is that we decided not to send anything that was happening with the first set through our subscription service, because there's a lot of people like Zach and like me to some degree who would already have some amount of first set cards because we backed the Kickstarter and got alpha. So when we're considering this as a business decision, just full transparency, what we don't want is to say, hey, everybody, we have a Sorcery subscription, but if you backed the Kickstarter, don't join it until after
Till
the
some
first set.
undescribed period of time.
Because a lot of times you only get so many contacts and touch points with potential customers, and so you really want things to be actionable at that moment. So the moment that we say, hey, we have a subscription, do you want to get every Sorcery set automatically? We want everybody, regardless of if they back the Kickstarter or not, to be able to engage with that offering. So we started with the second set, Arthurian Legends, and that's been the case from the start. So given that we have the second set being served through the subscriptions, we have always been really interested in, is there a way we can serve the first set not through a subscription? And those conversations started with Eric, and so that led to this pre-order of beta that we're able to offer with the exclusive promo, basically identical to what subscriptions are, but running it through a different system so that we can have the subscription serve set too for everybody who backed the Kickstarter and beyond, and anybody who needs those first set cards we can serve with this beta pre-order. The second thing is too, is like Zach was saying, the game, I mean, Sorcery hasn't even hit yet.
Yeah.
So in terms of demand prediction, trying to understand how much to print, we could really go into this, and we've done so on the podcast a few different times, and just understanding the reality of 3-tier distribution, how it works, where the numbers are, when they have to be in, and how impossible it is for publishers to know how much to print, and why inevitably you see every collectible card game overprint or underprint for some amount of its life. It's due to a lot of problems, or at least as we see them, problems. But one of the ways we can help solve that problem for Eric is at least give an idea of how many people through our pre-order are interested in getting beta products. We can do fun things like compare that to the number of people subscribed for Arthurian Legends and try to kind of correlate, is there this amount of people in your audience? Does that correlate to maybe a universal demand of X? Some kind of data point to get an idea of how many people are actually going to want beta before you go print X thousand boxes, have them delivered in a warehouse and sitting on them for either a huge amount of time or no amount of time because they all sell out immediately, and then the scalpers and the gouging starts. So that's another piece of this that we can help Eric in a small way at least understand demand through this pre-order. So that's another piece of this. Now, it doesn't account for international pre-orders, people interested in the game internationally. It doesn't account for people who want to buy it locally, don't want to do a pre-order, don't want to do an online transaction. Those kinds of things are still variables, but we can at least get a number and get an idea to inform that print run. And I think that's very helpful for Eric.
And I think, again, it's basically a way for us to offer the boxes to people who, because we're not serving through subscriptions, like you said. And we've seen this go a lot of different ways. And the two primary things that happen, and these are really problems that are stemming from the way 3-tier distribution works. And to be clear, for most publishers and most games, 3-tier distribution is fine.
Yeah, it's great.
But we've seen this over and over and over and over and over. Destiny, I mean, even Arkham Horror, the LCG, we saw this exact thing.
That Deep Gate novella was so funny. It was miserable for us and for Arkham subscribers. But it's just like suddenly there's a promo card in a novella, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
nobody can predict demand. They don't print enough, and it's a year and a half later before we can serve it.
Yeah, it was really a nightmare. But the basics are when you have a game like this, which was the most successful Kickstarter for a TCG. I guess Exploding Kittens was more like a board game, right? It's like a singular
it's not a
release.
TCG.
Yeah. So it's possible that like the print run is way too much or way too little. And this is really just an opportunity for people, and honestly, a lot like us. This is what I would want as a player, which is why I back the Kickstarter, right? Which is a really simple way to just get what I want to get and not have to worry about it, not have to think about it, not have to pay attention to release, not have to follow up with stores, not have to hunt stuff down. So if you just want to get in and know you're going to get it, this is a great way to do it. You get an exclusive promo that's absolutely beautiful for doing so. And honestly, it's the exact same thing as subscriptions. Yeah. Now, it's not exact in that it's a pre-order, so you pay up front. And once we get past the end of March, you can't go back on that order. But the recognition of it's a guaranteed box that comes with a promo is very similar. And so organizationally, one of the things we are just trying to do is create a really simple, reliable way for players to get the games that they want and not have to worry about it. And that's who we are, and that's what we do. And then even with subscriptions and this pre-order, it allows us to pass that information along to the publisher much early. People I saw in the Sorcery Discord earlier asking, do we order through 3-tier or do we order direct? And we order direct. It's the only way we can guarantee that this is happening.
We had to make those moves a long time ago for subs.
Yeah. We started subs in 2011, and one of the most common frustrations for us was no matter how far in advance we're willing to order, commit to ordering, pay for an order, guarantees we're willing to make, it's like you just always have to wait till a week before release and hope you can get enough.
Because distribution just does not offer or operate in a way that can accommodate retailers interested in doing it differently than the way it's being done. Yeah. I think that's the main key.
And for some context on the way it's being done, right? I think this is really important.
Let's get into it, man.
Yeah. I'm happy to get into it. If you have questions,
I want to have a combo about this.
But effectively,
thinking about this for 16 years now.
Yeah. The way 3-tier distribution works is publisher prints a game, usually somewhere between 3 to 6 weeks before the release of a product, whether it's an expansion or the core game itself. Distribution will lock in how much they're ordering. And it's not till the week before, a lot of times, that they're saying, hey, retailer, you have to order this product. And a lot of times, back in the day, like way back in the day, when we were ordering FFG games through distribution, before FFG was owned by Asmodee, who's now the distributor for them, so we ordered direct there too. We would not find out until Monday or Tuesday of release, when release was on a Thursday or Friday, exactly how much product we were getting, and we didn't have to. The upside is we didn't have to commit to product until then.
Yeah, which most retailers want.
And most retailers don't really care about selling a product until they can actually sell it. So they have it, like they can buy it and sell it to a customer immediately. And so for most games, that's fine. And even if you picture Magic or Pokemon, the scale they're at and the consistency they're at with how the product they're producing and how much people are buying is a very different ball game than someone like FFG, or in this case Eric's Curiosa, well, FFG before Asmodee. I don't know how that works now. But those realities mean that a publisher is printing 4 to 6 months a lot of times before release. And so at that moment, they a lot of times have nothing. They have no guarantees of orders. They have conversations they've had.
Yeah, sometimes they'll like have a sell sheet that they'll send to a distributor, and distributor like, well, I might take 10,000 units, I might take 500 units, I might take no units, and then they can change their mind for a long time after that conversation has happened. So for a publisher, there's absolutely no certainty when you go to press that button. You can actually see, I think Jamie wrote pretty extensively about this with Wingspan as well, some of his old blogs about Wingspan and that whole debacle. When you have a hot game, distribution retail pipeline gets very problematic pretty quickly. Yeah, honestly.
Because when you are in this environment, right, there's two very likely scenarios. And it even happened to Wingspan, which is just a board game, which is, it's so hard to actually print accurately. And with the collectible games specifically, if you underprint, like we saw with Fab, and ironically, they had the first 2 sets come out. After the second set, we were selling boxes at 20% off MSRP. And
with exclusive promos, with crazy promos that are now worth way too much money, and I'm disappointed I didn't get any.
And we could just order from distribution. Like, they had the first 2 sets in stock for a while.
Yeah.
Because there was more supply available than demand. And it's fine. And then all of a sudden, game pops off. nowhere near enough, and we see $500, $1,000, $2,000 boxes for the set that we, was $80 6 months ago or whatever it was back in the day. So when you underprint a collectible game, and we've seen this with non-collectibles too. Arkham Horror happened to the core set. It was like
for the revised core set for Netrunner.
Yep, it was like a $40 product that is now $100, $120 in the after. And some packs of Arkham were selling. The $15 packs are selling for $100.
Yeah, because you need charisma.
Yeah, what was that? Essex County Express.
I think it's Essex County. Yeah.
Or no, Miskatonic Museum. That was the pack that was really crazy for a while. The opposite scenario can also easily happen, which is way overprinting, and
which we also saw with Fab.
One of the deep dark industry secrets about overprinting is that if you and Fab saw this, right, with Monarch and the couple of sets after that, which is when you just have a bunch of products sitting on distributor shelves and on retailer shelves. Every retailer on the planet at this point, I think, has the capacity to sell products online.
Yeah, go through TCG Player or
or eBay or whatever you want, or their own website. And so when it's oversupplied, a retailer's sitting there with 20 boxes on the shelf they want to get rid of. Because retailers, a lot of times, have a 2 to 4 week cash window. Like if they have to sit on something for more than 2 or 3 weeks on the shelf, they're losing money now. Because that's money they can't use to buy next Pokemon set, next Magic set, next board game. So when that's available, they obviously start trying to get rid of these products, right? So the deep discount dollar menu race begins. And then there is also other entities who see there's 5,000 units at distribution, and they're willing to sell it. Let's say it's a $100 MSRP product. A retailer only pays usually $50, depends on deal and shipping and all that kind of stuff. But they're willing to sell it for $55.
Right.
Because if I can buy it here for $50 and sell it here for $55 and make $5, like they'll keep hitting that button, right? They don't have, a lot of those people don't have a retail store, or they do have a retail store and it's like it's already doing its own thing. So now this is just like something they can do.
Business, side fun. And it's incredibly difficult to track this down. If you're a publisher who's saying, I want to enforce map policies, you have Joe's random card shack and you don't know who actually owns it. It's very difficult to enforce rules where there's a third-party marketplace like eBay or TCG Player, because it's just usernames. I mean, you can't track that stuff down very well.
Yeah, and even if you can, like the effort that goes into that is very challenging. Like it's not worth the money. Yeah. So there's a lot of issues that happen here, and there's reason that this is set up this way. And the three-tier distribution to me is really built to serve the big three, TCGs, and then also board games. And so they don't struggle with these problems as much because their scale is just so dramatically different. But when you're Sorcery, underprinting and not having enough product for people that want to get into the game can kill you. Like Destiny struggled with that early on.
Yeah.
Overprinting, Destiny set 2 and 3 can also kill you because now the players buy product on release and then 3 months later it's worth half as much as they paid for it. And then the third set they're not buying as much product.
And then an impossible problem to solve.
It's very challenging. Yeah, it's a very challenging thing to do. And also, you kind of mentioned it, but once a publisher sends product to distribution, they're so out of control.
Yeah.
Because we heard some horror stories of even Fab, some distributors intentionally like holding product off to the side, and who knows what happens with that. So there's just a lot going on there.
Diving into that, so a distributor could hold product, not sell it, make it seem like there's not anything available, then sell it more broadly. They could also move it off in a secret online channel. They could do it that way if they want. I will say, from conversations with Andrew at Earthborn, Giacomo and Ricardo with Skytier Horde, obviously, people like Eric and others, and various conversations for games that we didn't end up carrying, there is a big gap between publisher and distributor, and information flowing one direction or another, and trust flowing one direction or another. So that's an important piece of this also to understand when you just think about the industry at large, is really what a publisher does is sells a large amount of product at a pretty low price to a distributor, and then it goes and does its thing. And the perfect use of this system is it goes and distills down to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 different retail stores. Each of those retailers is incentivized to sell those products, and so they generate marketing and they generate interest among their local communities, which creates a community that's buying your game, which means you send more product to distribution, which then sends more product to retailers, and that's how you generate interest. But here's another interesting thing, and this is something we've talked about on the cast for many years now. We had one where we really opened this up. But sales and interest that are happening, for instance, like on a Kickstarter for Sorcery, the question is, for sales that are happening before a game is at retail, is retail driving the interest that is to be rewarded with sales in store? And this is a hard conversation to have in the industry at large, especially because we've experienced local retail 2012 to 2020 effectively. So we know the struggles of that and how difficult it is to manage a retail sales environment. In fact, we didn't really do it we made almost none money for a very long time. But the question you have to ask is, if you're a publisher and you're saying, do I want to send product to distribution? How much do I want to send? With the assumption that distribution sends to retail, you have to be betting that the cost of the boxes that you're putting out there, so let's say I sell a box for $30, knowing that retailers will sell it for $150 and the distributors take a cut in between. If I'm doing that, I have to bet that by getting that volume out there at retail, retailers are going to generate enough marketing value that I'm going to get that money back through sales at much lower, basically much lower profit for me.
Yeah. Because what normally happens there, just the math on that, is a $100 MSRP product, to make it easy. Just the retailer normally pays around 50. The distributors usually keep around 10%. Mm-hmm. So the publisher ends up with 40, and the publisher has to do everything inside that money.
Yeah.
Print runs, art, design, development, marketing, post-event, shipping, et cetera, et cetera.
Container, et cetera.
And so that's why you even see smaller publishers, because it's easy to assume with the success Sorcery has had that they're a big publisher. But even Fab, with all of the success and its tens of thousands of players that are actively participating in organized play and all this kind of stuff, is tiny compared to the big three. And so there's, I think, a baked-in assumption that distribution is even going to care, and retail is even going to care about Sorcery. And I don't think we're there yet. But point is, when a smaller publisher, and even with even less success than something like Eris Curiosa, is looking at releasing a product, I've had some conversations recently with very small publishers. Much smaller. And the math on it is, well, if I make 40 by selling through this chain, if I can actually sell it at 100% MSRP, or let's even say 80%.
Like direct through a website or something.
Yeah. So like if you're making 40, your costs are probably 15 to 20 of that. So you're really only keeping $10 to $20. So if you can sell it for 80 instead of 40, you get to keep $50 or $60. You can sell a third of the units and make just as much money.
Right.
So the bet on distribution is that you will sell triple plus. Otherwise, you're just breaking even, right? And you're going through and you're taking a big risk by having to print all this stuff. So the math on that's why Kickstarter is so successful for all these board games.
That's why giant publishers still use Kickstarter.
100%.
It makes so much more sense financially.
And it's why some of these board game and miniature Kickstarters can have so much stuff on it. Because if the cost of making a $100 board game is actually only $15, if you spend $30 instead, you can give people double, charge $80, and triple your profit.
Yeah.
So all that to say, what is the value of distribution in retail? I didn't mean to derail you, but the math on it is really stark.
Good point.
It's really painfully stark.
Yeah, you need to have a belief that you're going to get the scale that you need to make that bet worth it.
Yeah.
And some publishers do that, and they do get that scale, and it does work. And it's built, and for long-term continued sales of a game like Catan, distribution is going to make a ton of sense because you want that absolutely everywhere in the world.
Super accessible, et cetera, et cetera.
For some publishers, I think we're finding it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think it's also an understanding with some games, like Sorcery is a good example, or Fab. It's a little more complicated because I think when you're Fab, Flesh and Blood, as an example, they're making the bet that rewarding the retailer for making this transaction they will invest in marketing, but they'll also invest in providing a space for people to play.
And the organized play is big for Fab.
Yeah, but the friction point, and we've been talking about this for a long time. We've been working for years on what we call 3.0, the third iteration of our local store. And the whole model that we're working on is kind of crazy because it is actually seeking to answer some tough questions, which is, it used to be a lot harder for this to go wrong, but when a publisher goes to distribution, and they're taking significantly less to get this benefit. A lot of times, the picture in the head is local retailers will be able to sell this product at a profit, and they'll support my game, they'll provide players a community, and they'll provide onboarding, they'll provide marketing. But realistically, we know that, like I was talking about, the deep dark secret of the industry earlier is once you go to distribution, you lose control of your supply. You also don't know who's going to get this product. So you cannot, as a publisher, control what you're rewarding effectively, right? And a lot of times, we dealt with this for years, like with X-Wing, which we were huge supporters of. And we were talking about that at X-Wing earlier. It would be a $15 MSRP ship, so we pay $7.50. And there were online retailers charging $8 a ship.
Yes, there were.
And I had a really good friend come into the local store, and we were like all about X-Wing locally. Like, it was big. We had a big community. We had weekly league nights, multiple events a week, tons of education, free things that you could use to check it out. We were all aboard the X-Wing train. Yeah. And I had a really good friend of mine who was an X-Wing player, was talking to me, and a new wave was about to come out. And the entirety of what he was going to buy from the wave when he bought it from us was like $200 or $300. And he just mentioned to me the fact that if he bought these online, he could have saved like $100. But he was happy, to support us. And it is great that there are stores out there providing value, and there are people willing to purchase things from them. But our 3.0 model is kind of like, hey, let's stop dancing around it and saying, hey, you should buy from us at these prices. Because the X-Wing thing was just harrowing to me. Like, I was like...
It's like, I can't ask you to do that.
Yeah.
Why does it work like this? This makes no sense.
I genuinely, that night, was like staying up, laying in bed, just like, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Because...
But you can't sell this ship at $8 in store. It's not even worth the time to unbox it.
Yeah.
So but you can if you're selling 1 million of them. I mean, if you're at scale.
And the point of that is, there's some distribution when it's working, I think, is a really powerful tool. And the idea, people were asking earlier about what's the upside of going to distribution. Like, and I don't mean to be like, this isn't scary. It's just like, this is what it is. And as a retailer, trying to understand how to navigate these waters. But when you go to distribution, you just lose so much control with this. And then the reality of, you just can't connect those dots on the stores that are actually supporting your game, Fab. Who gets to make those transactions, and then what competitive pressures do they have to face? Because there are stores willing to sell it significantly less online.
Thank you very much.
Good. No, speaking of 3.0,
yeah,
thank you guys so much. Yeah. Cheers.
Here's one way to do it.
Cheers to you. Cheers to all of you.
Thanks
for being here.
3.0 cocktail program, working on it.
Yeah. Carry that while I go de-Invisalign.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll continue on a bit of a soapbox on the distribution front. So the reality is that distribution works great for a great number of games. And in most instances, publishers don't care about control, and they don't care about supplying the market. They don't care about community building as much. It's like if I'm just producing a board game, and I've got it all done, and then I decide, okay, I'm gonna print I'll print like 10,000 copies. I shop it around to distribution. A distributor says to me, hey, I'll take 8,000 copies of your game. I would 100% be like, yes. I will send you efficiently these pallets of board games. You can do whatever you want with them because it doesn't matter. I don't need any kind of community support. I don't need retailers to run tournaments. I don't need to worry about where the product is. I don't need to worry about price stability on a collectible product. Take the board games, and by you buying those 8,000 board games, I can fund another print run of my board game. I end up breaking even, but I now have 10,000 copies to sit there. And now I can shop that to other distributors. Maybe my local retailers have helped market the game. More players want this, which means more stores want it, which means distributors want more copies. And there it spins. And for a board game, that makes a ton of sense, and it's a very successful system. For certain collectible games, it's a big question mark. I mean, Pokemon runs into very strange issues with supply and where's it going and who's got it and all those kinds of things.
One of the craziest things about Pokemon to me, and that we launched our Pokemon subscription in like 2018, 2019, and started supporting it locally. It was the card game that got me into card games, really.
Yeah.
Is how often it will be Tuesday or Wednesday before release, and that's when we find out how much we're getting of the product.
It's insane.
And it's Pokemon. And what's really crazy to me is how it was really eye-opening, because we also spent a long time not dealing with TCGs.
Yeah.
Destiny in late 2016, 2017 was the first TCG we had sold or supported since like 2009 with spoils back in the day. And Destiny was only kind of collectible. Like it was a collectible game of booster boxes, but now that we're back into it, like I understand it was somewhere between an LCG and a collectible game.
Yeah.
It was like a really expensive LCG, honestly.
Yes.
But the Pokemon dabbling there and then Fab was just mind-bendingly eye-opening for us in terms of how these things work. Because we've been dealing with mostly non-collectible expandable games for a while. When we're talking about a $15 pack, it hits different.
Yeah.
The whole conversation hits different.
Yeah, it's a different vibe.
Even MSRP, it's like, oh, well, it's 15 or 13.
Yeah.
It's the map. It's like, okay, well, this is very similar numbers, but it's just a whole thing. But yeah, how late distributors know how much they're getting in Pokemon is like mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Like they can't really speak to what you're going to get until very late themselves.
It's a last minute, like. Okay, so all that said, distribution has advantages for sure. Also has disadvantages, and as a publisher, you have to maneuver that, and you have to figure out how much to print and where it goes, and where to put products, etc. So on that note, I think the next question is basically, do we think Sorcery is going to go to distribution? Are we the exclusive source
These
of
are good
beta
questions.
pre-orders? And the answer to that is we do not think so. I don't think we will be the only place to get beta at all.
I've seen Eric talking in the Discord, and even in my own conversations with Eric, the intent the entire time is to have this product go through full distribution. So particularly if you're international, this will be very relevant because I saw a lot of international people asking him. And yeah, I mean, you're shipping heavy booster boxes from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Croatia or the Netherlands or whatever it may be. It can be very expensive. So the intent is distribution, but as we've been talking about, you can't even guarantee it. So I saw some people saying you guys are doing this pre-order, but
use that word FOMO. It drives me crazy.
Fear of missing out.
I'm literally here trying to design something that is the exact opposite of that.
Right.
It's a 2-month pre-order window. There's no pressure to do it. There's no time limit.
Yeah, and it was very intentional because it could have been, we have a pre-order window with an exclusive promo. We only have so many boxes that we can sell this way. Like, sign up now if you want to get it. But that's antithetical to what we're trying to introduce peace and stability to our new empire. No, that's an Anakin reference. I brought peace. Yeah. Really though, it's a 2-month window. It is it's early. The product's likely going to end up in distribution. And when I say likely, we're not in control of it. First off, second, you don't. As a publisher, even if we were the publisher, you don't know which distributors are actually going to pick it up, how much they're going to buy, which stores are going to buy it, how they're going to serve those stores. You can try to negotiate certain things, but again, unless you're Magic, you can't walk into a distributor and say, here's how I want you to distribute my product. Have these caps on stores, have a map policy, MSRP, manage this stuff.
How much work that is.
These are huge.
It's just product on the shelf. You want to move it out.
Well, and all you're trying to do as a publisher, if anything, is get people to care and pay attention and want to stock your product. So you don't walk into distributors and say, you can carry my product, but here's all these restrictions, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have a ton of leverage, unless you're literally Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, then you can write the rules, right?
Right.
So the intent is not for us to be exclusive. It's just a guaranteed way to get it. And the way we've designed everything on our side is we want to make it for people that don't want to mess with it, don't want to worry about it. And I've seen so many games that come out and if we have an underprint scenario, like with Fab, Monarch was selling for $500 a box.
Right.
So it's possible that this comes out, it's widely distributed, there's a ton at distribution, it's overprinted, people are deep discounting it, and we see all this stuff.
Right.
But I also know that over and under printing are issues that Eric is very aware of, does not want to run into. This is supposed to be a collectible product. It's a very high-end product. The art value is super high. But at the same time, the tools available for publishers, especially small to medium-sized publishers, to avoid under and overprinting are few and far between. It's a very difficult problem to manage. Even FFG, I mean, we used to get very frustrated at that whole situation. But as time went on, you start understanding the mechanics of the industry, and you understand why it's so easy to do. Basic example, last I knew, there were 5,000 plus retailers in the U.S. And so Fab actually tried to launch a direct-to-retailer distribution model at the very beginning of its existence. And apparently it failed miserably.
Yeah.
And the reality is that for most retailers who have never heard of Fab and don't care, a player walks in and says, hey, can I get 2 boxes of this game you've never heard of? They go to the distributor's website, they type it in, they can't find it, and they say, hey, sorry, I can't get that. They don't want to set up a new account on a new website to order 2 boxes of this random game they've never heard of.
Right.
And so direct to retailer makes sense if you're giant and you have all the retailers that care about your product already. But otherwise, they go to distribution. And then, where was I even going with that?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the long and short of it as to where distribution can begin and end in this equation. So, like, as far as Sorcery going to distribution, I think the assumption is it will happen. I mean, but we genuinely don't know. These are not conversations we have with Eric. It's like, hey, are you sending this to distribution? How many are you sending over there? We'd like. It's really just about, can we find a way to offer this as a pre-order for our customers, so that they can get beta. That's the beginning of the conversation, and that's really what we're trying to do, is just offer this product. We said in the product description, I want to call this out because I've seen it referenced a few times, saying this is the only way to guarantee you get these cards without any gouging or speculation. So the reason it was said like that is for the reasons that we mentioned just now. We don't know that there's going to be gouging or speculation with this product at all. We don't know if it's going to be widely available at distribution. We don't know if it's going to retail at all. So in terms of how can you guarantee that you can get these products without doing the dance of, oh no, it's underprinted and now I have to pay $400 a box, or oh no, it's overprinted and now it's widely available everywhere and the product is useless or worthless, etc. If you want to guarantee to get this product without dealing with that side of things, which is still a giant unknown, this is the way to do it. And that's why we put it that way. It's not that this is the only way you can get the product. In fact, it might be. I mean, it's very unlikely, but we just don't know. But it's very unlikely that that's the case.
If that were true, for us, that would be a great benefit.
Well, that'd be awesome
to be the exclusive pipeline, but we would be very direct about that.
Yeah, once that's known.
If we could say that and be like, this is the only way you can get beta, that would have been the first sentence.
Be saying that.
That would have been the first sentence. So this is definitely not the only way to get beta. The intent is not scare. It's actually the opposite. It's relief. So if you want to know you're getting it and you're willing to pay MSRP, which is $150 a box to get it,
this is
this is it. And you get a beautiful promo with it. And if you're not, if you want to buy it from a local retailer, you want to get it at a cheaper price, or you want to roll that whole thing, that's also maybe possible, but we can't guarantee that either. And Eric can't even guarantee that. That's what's nuts. He could even find multiple distributors to buy this product. And I'm not certain, again, I'm not a publisher. I haven't ever had to have these conversations. I've only ever interacted with distribution as a retailer. But even just based on the stories I've heard, even if he had distributors who were like, yeah, we'll buy this many thousands of boxes, he can't even guarantee that ends up at retail.
Sure. Sometimes, and honestly, they just go to Amazon with that. I mean, it's happened.
Which is crazy.
It's a real thing.
Think about that. Like, actually, that whole system is wild.
Let's just go, man. I feel riled up now. Kitchen Table TCG. Hey, what's going on, Kitchen Table TCG? Want this make stores not want to carry the game? If you guys are able to sell now with guaranteed supply and a promo card, why would a store want to compete with that? Oh, it's a great question.
Oh my goodness, I have two things I want to say. Also, good to see you, Kitchen Table. First is, realistically, this is just a worse offering than our subscriptions generally.
Sure.
So the reason I say that is you have to pay up front, right? And it's primarily because we didn't want to send beta through our subscriptions for the reasons you said earlier. And we announced subscriptions for Sorcery when the Kickstarter was going on. And there wasn't this, right? So I don't know where the energy comes from. But the other reality is...
I've got an answer.
Well, go ahead.
Would you like for me to give you a
I was
sentence?
going to give my second point, but yeah, you can hit your sentence.
Okay, so let's think about this. Won't this make stores not want to carry the game? So let's unpack that a little bit. What that basically says is retail stores won't carry this unless they can easily get sales that would have gone elsewhere if given the opportunity. So what we're saying is players are willing to buy this product right now. The retailer has done nothing. The retailer has not marketed this game. They haven't put it on their shelves. They haven't created any new players for Sorcery. So the people who are wanting to buy beta right now, what has the retailer done to earn those sales? Just answer that question internally for yourself.
Yeah.
Now, if instead the question is, the answer is retailers are going to want to stock Sorcery so that they can create new customers of Sorcery and capture those sales. That's what the retail chain is designed to do. That's exactly the idea behind it. But right now, I would love to know examples of what a local retailer is doing to generate sales and customers for Sorcery that they are then not capturing the transactions off of that. Secondarily, the entirety of the retail model where you're generating players and sales or generating players and interest and then capitalizing on that through a retail transaction is very questionable broadly. We've been talking about this at 3.0 extensively. I can teach somebody X-Wing, I can teach somebody Flesh and Blood, I can teach somebody and get them jacked on X, Y, and Z. They can go buy that product anywhere they want. Those two things are not intrinsically tied. So this is already happening across the entirety of retail, not just tabletop games. If you're experientially providing a reason for somebody to get interested in something and they turn around and buy it online for 20% off, 30% off, that's a problem you have to solve fundamentally. You have to ask, how can I make a profit? How can I charge? How can I stay in business with a model that is immediately competing with online retailers that are going to sell this product for less money? I think until you're answering that question, you're already in trouble. The model is already in jeopardy because it's already happening.
Yeah, which is the whole 3.0
right
experience.
Nothing about teaching a player generating interest guarantees you sales ever.
Yeah, and I think the reality there too is if a full MSRP pre-order where you pay months in advance stops transactions that you would have otherwise that's such, to me, a fraction of the actual pie, as it were. It reminds me of when we were talking to Travis from Millennium Games, where he was saying a lot of retailers complain about board games that were going to Kickstarter at the time. And Wingspan was good. They didn't Kickstart, but that was a whole issue at that gamma.
Yeah.
And how for him, he's had a ton of success selling board games that went to Kickstarter, other retailers ignored. And there's some stat on the percentage of any given successful board game that moves at Kickstarter versus retail. And it was still 90% retail. Mm-hmm. Where the wheels
I think it's still only at 12% of all transactions in the States are online.
Yeah. So to me, even the way all the stuff that's happening, it's not designed to try to in our part, and we've had to walk this line forever. With Fab, both examples, which is not being deep discount online retail. We did that for X-Wing with the years with LCG packs, et cetera, et cetera. But then with Fab, it was not back before there was MAP, not going even lower. Right. And then when boxes were pre-selling for $500 a box, not going above MSRP. And so it's not, there's no I think the question comes from, do you think this is going to disincentivize stores to care about this product? Right. And with some assumptions back then that these stores would care about the product in the first place. And then on top of that, if you lose the value that they're going to create, the game will never be successful or take off and all that kind of stuff. So I do think it's valid that you want a product that local retailers want to support. But as you said, there's issues, even if none of this existed and it just came out and it was at normal distribution, that to me, the way harsher reality is the deep discount online retailers who are selling products. Right. That is, as a local retailer ourselves, that was a tremendous friction point for us, particularly once we got past $15 packs, Destiny boxes all the way to X-Wing waves. It's a whole thing. Yeah, it's a whole vibe.
So anyway, there's some thoughts. I mean, this is particularly fiery for us because we've been in the tank the last couple of years, outlining all the problems with the retail 3-tier pipeline and with retail stores as they are now, and the kind of the historical role that the retail store played in simply retailing products as the value of those places. You couldn't get products anywhere else. So there was a lot of value in having shelves of product that then you walk into the store and the only way you can get the next Warhammer 40K release is because you see it in the store and that's the only place. Then the mail order catalogs came along. that kind of started it going a little bit differently. But now, online retail being so widely available and volume being so much more easily attainable and scalable with an online warehouse and a deep discount warehouse, it's a new paradigm. Like, I'm just being completely honest. Like, if you're still playing the old game, it's not going to work for all that much longer. Like, I don't know how much longer we have, 5-10 years.
Yeah.
But if the value you're offering is 2 players to play the game in your space, and that's how you're supporting the ecosystem, then support it that way. Like, that it's not through product sales then. This is the conclusion that we've had to come to ourselves. It's got to look different. It's straight up got to look different. Because even right now, whether it's Sorcery or anything else, if you get someone interested in Fab in your store, they can go buy Fab boxes for map all over the internet. So figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, if you're a retailer who's like, I need to guarantee I have Sorcery in my store, the only way you can get Sorcery is through your distributor. And you need to call your distributor and say, I need a way to guarantee Sorcery. And they're going to tell you, well, we haven't committed to buy it yet. So what then? I mean, you got to look.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to figure it out. There's got to be other avenues or other models that need to start taking place.
And honestly, like, the other kind of elephant in the room for me, I mentioned it earlier, is the assumption that local stores are going to care at all. And there's probably, I think there were some 50 to 100 stores that back the Kickstarter to get the alpha edition of the product, and I'm sure that will do quite well for them, because there's going to be very limited amounts of that alpha product. But I think that the reality that happens in the industry right now is when you go to distribution, the vast majority of distributors and retailers are not going to care about your product because it's not one of the big 3. And even just basic, not even big 3 for us, like we had communities for games, and every time we add a new game, you can see, is this and locally specifically, you can see, even online, but locally, does this bring new players into our community, or does it just divide the community we already have?
Right.
I particularly remember around the Doomtown time, there were a handful of games all hitting there, and we saw, prior to 2015, it was like very Game of Thrones, Netrunner, and X-Wing focused. That was our biggest 3 local communities. But if you're a local store that's a Magic store or a Pokemon store or both, or Yu-Gi-Oh, whatever, and we saw this with Fab, right? I think the only reason that more than a couple hundred stores care about Fab is things went crazy, and all of a sudden, and this is where I was going earlier. I lost my train of thought. When you go from a couple hundred stores buying your product to there were 5,000 stores plus in the U.S., if all of a sudden there's a product that there's not enough of, all this,
Guess what happens?
You go from 200 or 300 stores that care to 5,000 stores that care.
Because it's retail. You want to sell products. It's the easiest thing ever.
Yeah, especially products people definitely want and there's not enough of. Like
that's retail the world over.
That's the best product
for 1,000
in the world.
years.
But the reality of the scale, right? If you go from 300 to 5,000 stores, even 5,000 stores ordering 12 boxes each of Sorcery or Fab, whatever the example is, suddenly you need 60,000 boxes to fulfill the orders, right? And you may have, literally, I think they revealed the print numbers of the first 2 sets of Fab, and it was like 18,000 boxes.
Yeah.
So once the math turns, every store in the world cares, and I honestly think Legend Story did a phenomenal job using the leverage they had at the time with all that excitement to then get thousands of stores interested that would actually stick around. Once it is successful, it's this weird chicken and egg where most retailers don't care until it's successful, but it's a lot of times not successful until a bunch of those retail stores have cared. So for most games, it's a really weird scenario to be put in and a problem to solve.
It flips immediately, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then once it flips, it's like uncontrollable.
Now you're underprinted, and now everyone's
and all these other
because
problems.
You can't get cards.
Remember Destiny? I mean, that's an example that gets cited quite a bit. Is like when Destiny first came out, we took flack because we had inventory, but the reality was, and that was so funny to think about. 2 weeks prior to Destiny coming out, I do not know there was a cap on how much product we could have ordered.
Yeah, and in retrospect, we should have ordered as much as possible.
I mean, I should have maxed out every card, gotten loans, gotten personal. I should have bought all of it, right? And we literally with Destiny, and this is a real example of this. So Destiny got announced at Gen Con 2016, and the announcement and the dice and the colors kind of made it look like a kid's game, honestly. And that was back before TCGs were cool. Like that, it had been a while before this whole TCG wave had taken off. So I'm a huge, or at least I was, I think I am. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So I'm a huge card game fan, huge Star Wars fan. I played every Star Wars card game, even the LCG, until episode 9. So when Destiny got announced, it's like the assumption, I think, from a lot of people that watch us is Zach's going to be all about this. And I remember that Gen Con, everyone, we demoed it first morning. Everyone that ran into us was like, what do you think of Destiny?
Yeah.
What do you think of Destiny? It's like, I played one game. I don't know. But then they sent us home with a beta copy of the game. I was building decks on the way home. Took the day after we got back from Gen Con. Normally it's a Monday. Took that day off. I was living with a friend at the time. Played some games all day. And then I was like, this game is like one of the best games I've ever played. It's Star Wars. It's collectible. It's also phenomenal. This game's gonna be it. And for the next month to 2 months, players and retailers were just bagging on this game. Like, this is gonna be dead on arrival. This game's gonna fail. And so we had been working with Fantasy Flight, and it was like, hey, I really want to show people how great this game is. Like, we did our most extensive content series ever for Destiny, leading up to Destiny. It's like, this game.
Also, because we kind of wanted to play it all the time.
No, I was obsessed.
It had a lot to do with it. We were like, dude, do you want to play this game?
I was playing so many games back then.
Jango Fett was like so busted, and we were like,
and I had the Vader his point cost was more, so I had a Vader with a Vader single die with Stormtrooper, and it was this whole thing. But I was convinced this is the game. And month and a half, we've been doing the content series, and slowly that had been being interacted with, and people were, some people were buying in and excited. But the time came, it was probably like 6 weeks out, which is before distribution, by the way. But 6 weeks out, it's like, how much are you going to order? And that was sort of the put up or shut up moment for us. And at that time, I didn't know this, that whole like 2 weeks to 6 weeks out. Apparently no one was ordering this game. Like,
completely dead in the water. We would later find out.
Yeah, like the internal perspective. There was a clip that someone shared from Gamma of some executives from Asmodee talking, or FFG at the time talking.
Was it Horvath at the time?
I think it was Horvath.
I think it was Horvath. He has Gamma videos.
Hi, Steve, if you're out there, if you end up somehow here. But at the time, I was just so convinced this game was the jam, and I wanted to see this. We were pouring tons of content into this, and so we went basically all in on Destiny. And for too long of a story, 2015 was a really trying time for me, and then for Covenant. And so we had just really kind of stabilized and recovered from an almost company-ending year of 2015. But we were all so convinced this game was going to be it. It was basically like, we ordered as much as we could.
We would have gone more conservative were it not for your
belief,
excitement.
Yeah, I mean, I was convinced.
We were like, Zach's really sure of this.
I was convinced. I'm a huge fan, especially at that time of FFG. I love those guys, love that team, love the designers, love the game, love Star Wars. Like, this is.
That was Lucas at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and end of 2015 is when Force Awakens came out. So like, Star Wars hype was like, my energy for Star Wars was very high.
Yeah.
And so we basically were the only people ordering it, and later would find out that we actually out-ordered, I think, literally every distributor in the world.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And it's a genuine risk. And then they had 2 weeks before, they had a pre-release at retailers with the Ray starter and the Kylo starter and the stuff. But the pre-release hit, and I remember that like last 2 weeks, our content just started getting more and more views. All that this hours of content week before we streamed, so just Destiny content. Game takes off, and by the end of the opening weekend, pretty much everyone else is sold out. And then we actually had some amount of supply left, and because we still had it in stock, this narrative got spun up that like we were the reason the game was out of stock because we bought it all.
Yeah.
Which we did help create excitement about the game, right, and the content, and we created demand, but we just bought inventory,
right,
and we're selling it.
It'd be one thing if everybody was trying to order all of this, and then it's like, we're going to prioritize these guys and give them 80% of supply. But when it was 0% orders, and we were like, we'll take as much as we can get, that's definitely a different vibe.
And of course, FFG is like, if they have printing 30, 40, 50,000 boxes and no one's ordering, and we're over here like, yeah, we'll take as, looking back, it's not that much product.
Yeah.
That's the other part that's so crazy about it, is it's like, the amount, we just happened to be in stock after everyone was out. So
Yeah.
people thought we just had endless supply. I remember even with our Saga sets, so we did this thing where we would open enough product to build play sets, and we sold them as play sets called Saga sets. There were people that thought that FFG was just sending us the cards like that,
Oh yeah.
because they could not believe that we could make that happen in the time windows we were making it happen. But that stuff would come
They
in.
didn't see the 12-hour days though.
Yeah, well, we had different shifts of people, right? And I remember my hands like kind of bleeding
Yeah, it
from
was
all
real.
the packs that were opened.
It was real.
And we were just trying to get those shipped by release day. And very excited. I was just so happy to see the game. But then, anyways, it's a whole long story. But the point of it being, that's a really good example of, once the game got popular, every retailer in the world wanted to buy it.
Right.
And there were tons of complaints.
But
at
nobody
Gamma and
would
stuff.
take risk on it up front.
Right.
Nobody
And-
wants to take risk.
And honestly, the system is not designed for retailers to proactively promote. That we ran into that a ton before we started buying direct, which is, again, with distribution and even some direct situations.
Yeah, there's no certainty.
It's like no matter how far in advance we're willing to commit to a product and buy it, you can't. It's just not how they work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're going to print this thing and we're going to send it, and then it's going to be on shelves and then it will sell.
That's the thing. You cannot be rewarded for pre-promotion as a retailer until you play a different game. You can't. It just doesn't exist in the 3-tier system. We couldn't even get that with Asmodee, with FFG. We couldn't even get that any kind of guarantees. It's like we'll do videos, we'll do promotion, we love what you're doing, we want to support you. All that we need is the ability to have certainty about supply. Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. So a retailer is not incentivized at all to promote anything until it's on the shelf.
Until they actually have it.
Yeah.
Because why would you proactively
Why?
support a game if you don't know that you're going to get it? And
Right.
And again, the weirdest part of all of it is just, well, what does proactively supporting it look like? And then the recognition that you selling the product is the way you're currently getting compensated by a publisher for the work you're doing. But the work you're doing is not selling the product. Like, actually. It's
Right.
play space, it's community, it's marketing, it's education, it's
Right.
events, it's all that kind of stuff. And that's one of the weirdest realities of the space that we are actively trying to solve. That's what 3.0 is all about. In that,
The retail transaction is way less valuable than it ever has been.
yeah, and we've been fighting that for years.
Mm-hmm. Now, some people love walking to a store and buying physically. That's great. That retail is there for you. But I think we see the wind turning. If you look at the numbers, just look at the percentages of online transactions over time. It's here. It's coming. It's only getting more and more real. And if you really think you want to sit there and compete with Amazon on lower priced products, I think it's gonna be a tough road. I mean, I just don't see it working out. And I guess we've bet a lot on that. Really good question here. I think the actual question is, what are some retailers doing differently to get the kind of relationship where they know the number of boxes they're getting and getting a promo? The raw answer to this is spend 16 years providing as much value as possible. Build a customer base, build a content platform, a content engine, build relationships with publishers, generate as much value as possible until the equation has you as important enough to talk to and care about. You're not going to get these kinds of deals. So if you recognize that that's something that I need as a retailer, then you have to go get it, right? You have to play a different game than, I hope distribution will work differently this time. And if not, I'll complain about it. Because it ain't going to change, right? So if you think it needs to change for you, then you have to change it. That's the only way it happens. And sometimes it means grinding for 16 years to get to a point where you can get there. And if you're able to do that, I hope that you do, because we need as many people as possible to be change agents in how this is all working. Because it has serious issues and implications for people.
And honestly, just it's even our approach locally, right? Our local approach is not even attempting to address those problems. Our local approach is saying, we provide value in these ways, and we need to find a way for that to be economical.
Right. It's got to be sustainable.
Independent of this other. I mean, it is really bizarre, right? If you think, ask any publisher, and I would be curious to know the answer. If you are a publisher, leave a comment in the YouTube video.
Classic Zach button.
Yeah. Question of the day for just publishers, all three of you out there listening. But if the value you're actually providing as a retailer is not the retail transaction, and correct me, I've talked to a lot of publishers, and I do not think the primary point of value a retailer offers anymore is the retail transaction. I think that was the 90s. There's not online sales. You literally, distribution has access to thousands of stores. Distribution is even more valuable at that point.
Absolutely.
Because as a new publisher, how do you even reach? But back then, you could the number of games coming out was so few. Like, that's a whole different story. All that to say, if the way you're actually providing value is through play space and community and events and tutorials and
customer loyalty,
having starters available for people to try the game and product in stock, like that, there is value in that transaction. But especially for expandable games, like board games, I get a little more because it's an exploratory. I show up, I look at what's on the shelf.
Yeah, you could be a discovery store
Yeah.
if there's enough people in your community that want that.
Yeah, but think about Fab at this point. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure 98% of boxes that are moving, let's say 90% of boxes are moving, will move no matter how they had to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are active players who want the product, who are going to get the product in one way or another. And there are, obviously events and charging for events. There's ways to do that, but
Limited.
yeah,
Sealed and draft,
I think
baby.
the average local space isn't going to be able to actually change the way the industry functions.
Sure.
Like that's a big ask, but I think what you can do is say, what's the value I'm providing? And as a business, how do I make that economical?
Yeah.
And if it's not, because again, like we've been saying, there are dark sides to the other side of this equation, which is if it's the online competition, the deep discount online retail after the fact. Like, even if everything was fair and parity and all that kind of stuff, like that, there still is the hole in the bottom of the ship over here, where you're having.
You're never going to be able to compete on price.
Yeah, like you're over there offering, and I feel it's horrible. Like, you're offering so much value. The stores that are actually trying, I know some for Fab that are doing exactly this, and then you're having to compete with, random online store or
compete with us.
Like right now, we
with our
even
subscription.
have this, right? Like, TCG Player, you can go buy boxes of like Everfest for $50-something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, legally, according to our agreements, we can't market a price less than $76 or whatever it is. I don't know the number.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do about that?
So it sits there.
Yeah,
That's what you do.
you're just stuck. So
It sits there, or you get on TCG Player and you move it illicitly, essentially under your map agreement.
yeah.
Those are your options.
This is a
Those are your options.
we've been wrestling against this for years, right? Because we have more questions.
Other questions about beta. That feels good. That feels really good. I saw some good comments from Jan. Scrolling through these comments is awesome. I appreciate everybody following along. I know this is not always the most exciting conversation for some folks, but it is what gets us up daily. I mean, there's such a fire in me about this. I feel like there are so many problems that could unlock such a bigger audience and a lot less stress for everybody in this space. And we're in the middle of a transition period. And you got to get on board with the transition because it's coming. Mm-hmm. The wave is here. It's been building for a long time. It's happening. And if you're not pivoting with it... Now, the cool thing is, there are an innumerable ways to pivot with it and ways that I haven't even thought of.
Totally. I mean, that's where the Board Game Cafe came from.
The Board Game Cafe is a classic thing. You could be the most awesome, mysterious place to walk into and find things you would never expect to find. You could have the most unknown board game selection. You could bundle your sales model with something that we haven't even considered. You could charge for things that we haven't even thought of. Right?
The comments coming out really nice. Thank you guys for being
There's
here.
a million ways to do this, but like if you really just think that you're gonna sit there and compete in this environment on a high demand product, it ain't gonna happen. It just isn't gonna work.
Now, I'll tell you very simply though, with Sorcery, assuming 3.0 is open, I would be so excited about the ability to have sealed and draft events for this game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a game unlike any other. Like, this is a very unique game.
Very different.
And I think it appeals to a very it's a different. I mean, one set a year, like that was where I was kind of going earlier. Is like the assumption that stores are going to care about this game at all. I think there will be stores that do. We're a store that cares, and if 3.0 is open, when it is open, we will care a lot about sorcery. But for the average store, like a collectible game that releases one set a year, with this theming and this like the way it works, I don't think it's going to be
unless you're doing monthly sealed and draft events and you're charging $20 a player and you're turning that $100 and some odd box into a $200 some odd box, which is what you should be doing, in my opinion.
When you have draft and sealed,
yeah, when you have draft and sealed, this is your advantage, right? Miniature Market can't offer draft and sealed. Covenant can't offer draft and sealed online. Amazon can't offer draft and sealed. If that's where the value is, then flex on that and go get it. And you can turn a box that somebody could sell online for X amount into almost double that amount just on entry fees that include the product. So that there's options.
And I've seen this question a few times from Torres88, so I want to answer it. It's saying, do I need to track down starters, or will the box be everything I need?
Starters and precons. This is a common question.
Yeah. So from what I know, there will be beta precons. I'm going to get some more information about that. We're not pre-selling them currently. I presume we will make those available, assuming that they are going to be available. But also, if you're buying like a booster box, as far as I know, there's nothing exclusive to a precon for beta that you can't get in the booster box. And
as far as we know,
Eric's
so Wiley, he's a mysterious.
I do know if you buy a single booster box, you should be able to easily build 2 decks or more of the game. Like probably a deck for each element if you really want it.
Even max, probably not max land, right? But we never get through 20 land. I think we cut down to like 10. And
I think you can at least have 2 lands worth of decks together.
Okay.
Because there are basically lands in the common slot too.
Okay.
So even from a draft sealed perspective, I think there has to be a certain amount
spread
of stuff going on.
Now, questions we've gotten: will we be selling the beta precons? Do the beta precons exist? Yes. I think the answer is yes.
I think they exist, but I need to get confirmation on this.
So we can't confirm that, but they have to, right? They pretty much have to. And then secondarily, will we be selling them? Once we have information from Eric on beta precons and what they are, and if they're going to be available to us, we'll absolutely sell anything that we can. I mean, any pre-orders for like beta precons would be great. We just don't have any information on that. So I think that's it. Anything else? Anything else that you've seen on the Discord, question-wise? About got an hour into this segment. We may end up on the 6-hour train here.
Other questions?
Jan, you're leaving great comments, by the way. Thank you so much for that. I've seen a lot of great things.
Hank's saying, to confirm, the beta sale will close on the 31st of March. Is that correct?
What do we say?
The end of March.
Yeah, so we kind of leave it open.
After March 31st, the intent is to turn off the pre-orders.
Okay, let me put it this way. I'll just make sure this happens. It closes on April 1st.
Okay.
It could be 12:01 a.m., but it'll close on April. You'll have the entirety of the 31st of March to pre-order.
Okay.
Let's just say that. Unless Eric comes in with a bamboozle and says, like, I've got to get print numbers now.
I don't think that's...
But, okay, I'll even make a note of that to make sure it's open all of March 31st.
Okay. Another question I've seen, are the foils going to happen in beta? What about the curios? So the curios are a very rare, weird card.
Did you read Eric's response to the curios?
I have a quote from Eric in the Sorcery Discord. It's hard to know much about curios. There's almost no information about them out there. I think it's intentionally...
I love that he did that.
Yeah. It's a collectible game, like you don't know what's going to happen. I assume Alpha will have special things that are only Alpha in these categories, but I know Eric very much would, from every interaction I've had with Eric, I would assume he wants to make beta feel special and collectible in its own right. But at the same, earlier we were talking about same 403 card set, minimal changes. So I don't think if you went in big on Alpha that you're going to necessarily feel like, oh gosh, I can't believe I didn't buy any beta because of these issues. But I also assume that people that getting in beta that missed Alpha, you don't want to completely just make them feel like, oh yeah, I missed all the good stuff, like all the really exciting stuff. How they do that, I don't know. But fab example would be you have cold foils versus rainbow foils, and maybe you have different treatments or different art or different stuff going on. But that's one of the reasons we're such big fans is like this.
Bring some romance back to this thing,
it's just an understanding.
Let's go. Let's get a little artisanal thing.
You never know what's going to happen, but also like I want to respect the experience and make it great for people.
Yeah.
So I expect it to be good.
Well, one question I did see, is beta going to be available unlimited? Are they going to keep printing it until the end of time? Our understanding is that it will be one print run. of beta of an unknown number. That's it. So, and then our understanding again past that is if beta sells out and there's enough demand to warrant, again, how do you know? I mean, there, you know, you kind of try to piece this together from various data points. If beta sells out and there's a sense that it was very in demand and there's a lot of people that still want these first set cards, I think that's when maybe a revised print run or something like that would come in to do a third print of the first set to satisfy that. But I get the impression that Eric wants to have a new name for every printing of something. That's my sense. Cycling. Maybe revised would be unlimited, but I don't know.
I mean, the other piece of this that is fascinating to me is Sorcery is such a just a different game. And the reason I mention that is intentionally so. It was part of what made it so appealing. Not focusing on tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And one set a year, different pacing, all hand-painted art, go down the list. But the lack of focus on tournaments makes it a way different scenario than we experienced with Fab.
Yeah.
Which is, if beta sells out, and then Arthurian Legends comes out, and you can't get beta, I assume if there's a lot of demand on Eric's side, there's an interest in being capitalizing on the demand.
Right. But don't do too much.
But
because then it tanks.
Part of that, though, that's real, though, is if you were there for Alpha and Beta, you were there and you got the stuff. But when you remove the tournament focus, it's not a fairness thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not we need to make sure all these cards are always available because if Steven gets in 2 years from now. Yeah. And so, again, it's a collectible product. I don't expect to be able to buy the 1988 Fleer set every year forever of sports cards, right? And so...
What's a sport card?
Personally, I love the concept, that even the way they did the Kickstarter of however much it's backed for, that's alpha. We're not trying to maximize, capturing revenue or, right now, how many more alpha could you sell if they were just willing to sell it? There's an element, though, of if you were there and you were in that moment, you have the thing.
And you committed early.
Yeah.
You believed in the product, et cetera.
And so with even beta, to me, there's if I were doing it, again, this is up to Eric's Curioso, but if I were doing it, once beta's gone, even revised edition, I mean, I don't know.
Maybe after the third set or something.
Yeah, I know with SoulForge,
let's go out of print.
SoulForge announced
the old-fashioned way.
When they basically print the set and then they're not going to reprint it. So the first set's out, and if it runs out, it runs out. And that's a unique deck game, hybrid deck game. So it's got elements that make that work. But at the same time, I like the idea that you print the thing and you move on, and collectability doesn't then come from artificial scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from time. Just like baseball cards, or just like whatever's going on, or tons of collectible stuff, like old Coke bottles and stamps and whatnot. It's like this was not designed and then underprinted to make it have value. It was printed. We attempted to print to demand. We made it available to people when it was coming out. And then now it's hard to get because that thing came out in 2022 or 2023, and now it's 2030. And it's like, well, beta is hard to get now because it's old. And people opened their boxes and did whatever they wanted with them. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I see a lot of comments from you, Jan, about domestic production stuff. I think that's coming. I honestly do. I really do think that level of vertical integration is probably on the way. I mean, so what we actually see, if you look at the way that technology is developing, and really it's always technology, the way that's developing. It's going to be easier and easier for publishers to sell direct, or to work through a retailer like us, like a bigger retailer, an online retailer, to handle a part of the transaction, the direct sales, the actual delivery to customers, et cetera. And maybe this is the dark truth in reality that we've been staring in the face. It's going to be easier and easier to cut out the retail chain moving forward, strictly. I can spin up a Shopify store in 10, 15 minutes and start selling a product, right? Now, do I want to build the infrastructure to generate printing labels and boxes and employees to pack out orders and send to individual customers across the world? That's something I may or may not want to do as a publisher. I may not want to have that expense and basically commitment. But It's easier than ever to sell products online. If it also becomes easy to manufacture products domestically, then we will start to see more and more of this vertical integration where publishers can start cutting out middlemen and get products directly to customers. Now, the grand gambit, and this is the question that we all have been asking for many years, is like, what happens? Are games even valuable at all if the retail chain isn't involved?
Yeah.
Will people find ways to play these games not at a retail store? Will models pop up that serve players looking to play games without selling them? That's a good option, I would say. So there's a lot of things spinning right now, and that's what I mean by the wave is here. But I would not be surprised to see more and more vertical integration. I think if you look at what Magic's been doing and how Wizards has been moving, I mean, it's right in front of us. It's definitely happening. If not vertical integration, it's going straight to Amazon and some stuff. So there's definitely a vibe here that you need to adapt to. I mean, you got to change.
Two things. One from Scheming Skeleton.
The old Scheming Skeleton. What's up, Scheming Skeleton?
Basically saying thinks that printing beta is unnecessary because there's plenty alpha printed.
Also says I think selling beta is perfectly fine. It just seems unnecessary.
Yeah. So I'm again earlier referencing my example. It just sticks out in my brain with Travis talking about Kickstarter, but saying the vast majority of board games that sell, even the successful Kickstarters, come after the Kickstarter. So it's possible that beta was all the players that are going to be interested and they bought all they wanted and there's plenty of product and all that kind of stuff. But I think the hope is that a lot more players are going to get into the game and want it, and they haven't had a chance to buy it yet. And I know a ton of people that would not touch a Kickstarter with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, actually a lot of people.
Yeah, especially if you're paying $150, $140 a booster box like the Kickstarter had for a game that is a year plus out. Like it's just not even in the
I don't
realm.
have any worry about alpha holding value and not being widely available. I think it'll be a very valuable product.
Yeah, the second one is Tom saying comparing sports cards to playing cards is a bad faith argument. No one is playing with sports cards if a company isn't printing cards. Again, they're not caring about the game itself, just the secondary market. So, two things I'll say about this. One is that really matters for a game that cares about tournaments and competitiveness, right? If that's the experience you're trying to offer. I think in Sorcery's case, it just isn't true because me not having beta or alpha 5 years from now is significantly less relevant for Sorcery than it is for Fab, a no rotation competitive
100%.
game.
Yeah.
The second piece is just the actual physical limitation. So if you're gonna hit print on a product, there's a minimum amount you have to print, and if you're only printing the minimum amount, it's very expensive. So part of the genius to me of Sorcery going a very different path and just saying, tournaments can happen, that's fine. We may or may not support tournaments, but that's not our focus, right? The whole appeal to me of Sorcery is trying to capture that 90s feel of games for me, which is in the 90s as a kid when I was playing these games. You just kind of...
I was there.
Yeah, you just get what you get, right? I played games where you get a starter and a couple of booster packs, and you get 2 or 3 booster packs every couple months, and that was the game. And I think you can have that experience with Sorcery. You can go slow, you can play sealed, you can grab 6 packs and play the game and whatever. And so part of even sports cards, the reason they don't keep printing beyond collectability and that whole bit is continuing to print everything.
Obviously, that becomes impossible.
It's very impossible, and it's very expensive. And having warehouses and distribution, and if you keep printing everything all the time, then the prices are going to stay on the floor because there's always going to be extra. And if you have infinite growth happening, infinite players trying to get into the game, that makes a lot of sense because you always need more. But these markets tend, like you look at Magic, they're not going back and printing. I mean, they did that $1,000 thing. They tried. Yeah, but the recognition is they have rotation to kind of answer that. It's like we don't need to have this always available because we'll eventually rotate and you won't need it. But then they have the format where you can play all the stuff. So you kind of do need everything.
That's where all the expensive cards are.
So anyways, but just from the outset saying, we're trying to create that experience we had when we were kids or when we were younger playing these games like Magic for the first time. And when I hear people talking, I was too young and I would not have been allowed to play Magic when it was coming out, even if I were older.
The old D&D scare of the 80s, late 80s, early 80s.
But what I hear about those times and the way it functioned is very appealing to me. And so for me, I feel like Sorcery is kind of an opportunity to experience that myself. And I'm very excited to do it, and I don't feel the need to own it all necessarily, even though I bought a lot of alpha.
You feel kind of a need deep down here. Like I'm the kind of person who doesn't feel a need. You feel something, for sure.
Yeah, but I know that with Sorcery, like I want to collect and have certain things, like the foil Sorcerer's Stone as an example. That card's beautiful.
As an example, just as a random.
And I want the Elementalist foil too. But point is,
Also, every card foil wouldn't be bad.
Yeah. but I know I'm not gonna go play in a like $100,000 plus world championship.
Yeah.
So I don't feel the need. Like with Fab, it's like I want to own a play set of all the cards because if I want to play a certain deck, I want to be able to play it.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to hunt stuff down.
Yeah.
I don't want to play those games.
It's different.
And so I'm really looking forward to leaning back into Sorcery, even here on stream. Like I assume we'll just slowly take our time through who knows what experience over the course. But yeah.
Especially Arthurian Legends. Shout out, really good comment here. Astaria saying beta is necessary. Didn't even know about Sorcery until after the Kickstarter, so obviously that's a good example of why beta can be very helpful here. But also, Mickey T with a good comment, basically talking about how online retail, people will be open to find play groups outside of retail. Online retail allows folks to not feel restricted by that as their only playgroup option, libraries, pubs, etc. This is a tremendous reality that needs to be at the front of the conversation here. We have a fantastic little local community here in Tulsa that plays Go at the public library. And there's no reason that Go club isn't also playing Magic or Fab or anything else. So honestly, if your store isn't the best place to play a game like Flesh and Blood in your local area, then watch out. Because there's a lot of nice places where you can go do things.
Which, piggybacking on our point earlier, if you're not the best place to buy something, because you can buy it Amazon, online, wherever, deep discount retailers, and have it shipped to my house.
Mm-hmm. And if your floor is sticky when I walk in your building.
And you're also not the best place to play the thing. What are you?
Where are you? You're relying on old paradigms and old habits.
Yeah.
And it never works. I mean, that never works. So just really watch out. I'm trying to throw up a flare here, everybody. Anything else on beta? Let's get a game on the table.